Welcome back to the Grateful Ducks tailgate episode. I don't know. I don't keep track of the episode numbers. That's not my thing. But this is a week 7 recap. I'm your host, Brewhan Luke. Today is October 15th, 2024. It's a Tuesday night. This week, we will go and look back at some of the best and biggest games of week 7, including the battle with the Oregon Ducks and Ohio State Buckeyes. We're a Grateful Ducks. We're an Oregon Ducks heavy podcast, so we're going to dig into that one specifically. And boy, was that an epic battle for the ages. Man, there is a lot to dig into there. That could be a completely separate episode if we really wanted to go into elaborate detail about this game, just on this game. I could talk for an hour alone on this game. I'm not going to, because we have some other games that were some overtime thrillers that we're going to touch base on. And after we talk about some of the overtime thrilling games, we'll dive into the AP poll, the latest updates, and talk about how those shake out. And do I agree? Do I disagree with certain parts of the AP poll? And while discussing the AP poll, we will recap what else was happening with those teams that are ranked or unranked currently. So let's dive right into it. Let's talk about the big game in Autzen, the biggest game in Autzen Stadium history. Broke the attendance record. 60,000 plus fans were there. I want to pull up a slide right off the bat. If I can get there, just to show this, because earlier in the week, before the game unfolded, Ohio State fans were questioning how loud a 59, 60,000 capacity stadium could be, louder than Ohio State's 100,000 plus stadium, louder than the Big House, louder than Penn State. It's the loudest stadium in college football. Definitely the loudest in the Big Ten. Decibel levels were reading at 126, 127, 128. I've seen a whole bunch of different screenshots of all the decibel readings at Autzen Stadium from this game. There was pictures of Ohio State fans like this one. This one was probably the most viral picture, but there were several pictures of Ohio State fans in the stands plugging their ears, putting their hands over their ears. Coach Lanning, at one point in his post-game press conference, said he even had to cover his one side of his headset, which is open, so that he could hear the communications with the offensive coordinator and with Dillon Gabriel on the field to be able to communicate back and forth. Loudest stadium in college football. Loudest fans. Ohio State fans had no idea what they were getting into, despite being warned of the fact that this stadium could be this loud. The fans played a factor in this game. There were several false starts on Ohio State because of the decibel level. Threw them off of their game, mentally rattled them, impacted Will Howard on some play calling. We'll get to Will Howard here towards the end of our recap. But the stadium noise in Autzen Stadium, if people didn't know about it now, it's very, very real, especially now seeing it on that national stage that a lot of people in years past with Pac-12 after dark matchups may not have truly gotten to appreciate what that noise level was all about. So that's enough about the noise. Let's just get to the rest of the game. And there's a lot of back and forth. Early on, Ohio State went up 7-0 on an early touchdown. That should have never been a touchdown. Ohio State should have never been in the red zone. I don't know what went down and why the play wasn't reviewed, but there's clearly an Oregon interception there that was ruled a catch by Ohio State. I'm blanking on the name right now. I currently don't recall who it was with the interception. It wasn't Justin Jacobs. It wasn't Bryce Betcher. I don't think it was Amave. But anyways, that should have gone to a video review. I know it was early in the game, and maybe They didn't want to get into replay reviews that quick in that situation. But that was a key play in the game early on that I thought was really going to impact the way the game shifted. But then Oregon came back and scored right away. And then there was another situation that unfolded. My man, Trayshawn Holden, you cannot do this. You cannot make a big catch in the play, in the situation, get caught up in the heat of the moment. Dude just straight up spit right on the visor of the Ohio State defensive back and got flagged for an ejection. So early on in the game, in the first half, Trayshawn Holden is ejected from the game because he spit on an opponent. And it was a dude with a visor. So, like, you spit in his face, but it was like he's wearing a visor, man. Like, that doesn't do anything for anybody. You just made it more obvious and led to an ejection. Look right here. There's the ref right there. He's watching. He is seeing the spit leave Trayshawn Holden's mouth and go directly onto the visor there. That's an immediate flag right on the spot there. Trayshawn Holden post game, I believe the next day, wrote a very, very genuine apology, realizing his mistake, and he owned up to it. And hopefully he's learned his lesson from this and understanding. I think he did. He knows he made a very crucial mistake that could have cost the Ducks even more, because he's been one of the favorite end zone targets for Dillon Gabriel, who, if you haven't looked now, Dillon Gabriel, all of a sudden, who was one of the preseason favorites for the Heisman Trophy, he is sitting as the number 2 favorite again, right behind Ashton Jeanty in the Heisman Trophy hunt. I said that last week in the tailgate and previewing this game, that if you like Oregon to win and you want some better value than just Oregon on the money line, you might want to look into a Dillon Gabriel future, because before that game, he was hovering around +7, +800, depending on the books you looked at. And now he's a second odds on favorite to win the Heisman. You could still get it at a good value play compared to what he was in the preseason. But a couple of weeks ago, you could have got him at 9,000 or 900 plus 1,000 plus 1,200. Now he's back down to +250, +300, depending on where you look, as the second favorite in the Heisman Trophy hunt. Speaking of people that had big games, Evan Stewart. We had not heard a lot about Evan Stewart these first few games. He had a couple big plays where Dillon Gabriel aired it out, I believe, against Boise State earlier in the year. But it seemed like Will Stein was holding back and waiting to establish the run game, which he did last week, and then this week again against Ohio State. Against that Ohio State defense, to be able to establish the run and then air it out against those defensive backs was a hell of a game. And Evan Stewart right there, it just seemed like it was just right locked in stride for stride with Dillon Gabriel. He just dropped it in the bucket, not necessarily throwing like a dime or a dart, but like he just had that perfect drop in the bucket pass. There's Evan Stewart right there to get that catch, and a lot of explosive plays being made by Oregon's offense. A hell of a game called by Will Stein. A lot of credit to him. I did not pull up any videos of some of the aggressive play calls on 4th and short, 4th and inches that he made. You could scroll through Twitter. There's a lot of different feeds on that. But another guy that deserves a lot of credit, not just Dillon Gabriel, Jordan James, Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson, but also offensive coordinator Will Stein, really had a very, very good game plan. Moving on, we're going to talk about this, okay? So Will Howard and Ohio State were driving downfield. Okay, 10 seconds left on the clock. Ohio State has 1 timeout left. Oregon has all 3. 10 seconds on the clock. Not quite in field goal range yet. Oregon calls a timeout. Interesting. They come off of the field, ready to make adjustments, and thought maybe they saw something they didn't like. And Next thing you know, Oregon has 12 men on the field. And Ryan Day sees it. He goes running over to the ref. He's telling the ref, there's 12 men, there's 12 men, there's 12 men. The ball gets snapped. Play happens. No dead ball. That Oregon 12th man got onto the field, and it was an incomplete pass broken up by Jabbar Muhammad on the opposite side where the 12th away from where that 12th man was. Oregon took the 5-yard penalty. Okay. And in case you haven't heard, people are saying that Dan Lanning did this by design. Like he knew the rule. He knew that there was a little bit of a loophole in the rule book. I had a hard time believing it. I still kind of am unsure of what happened, but then it led to the next play, 6 seconds left. I think Will Howard was a little bit confused on how much time he had left on the clock. Maybe he saw 10 seconds. Maybe he knew it was only 6 seconds and he had a brain fart, but then he just drives down an extra 10 to 15 yards untouched and slides with 1 second left on the clock. By the time he gets down, the game's over and the Ducks win. But it's interesting because yesterday in Dan Lanning's press conference, he was asked about this play, and I'm going to show you this video after being asked about this play. It has the play being played out while Coach Lanning is answering the question. So you can see on the top half of your screen, you're going to see Coach Lanning answering the question, and you could take it for whatever you think based off of his answer. You could be the judge. And then underneath, you could watch the video to have it all synced up at the same time. So let's get to the clip.
Much of the commentary world has decided and struck you as a genius, Stan, for the 12-man penalty and declared that it was intentional. Was it indeed intentional to induce the throw one-on-one against Jabbar in that spot?
It wasn't one-on-one. We actually had a safety on top. So there was so it's called dog. It's when you play, but he wasn't in extremely tight coverage, but he was in dog coverage where he had safety on top of him. And there was a timeout before that. We spent an inordinate amount of time on situations. There's some situations that don't show up very often in college football, but this is one that obviously was something that we have worked on. So you can see the result.
Okay, so he did not admit, yeah, no, we did that on purpose. But you look at that smirk on his face and the way he answered the question and say that we spent an inordinate amount of time looking at different plays, some that don't really come up that often. And we saw something there that we were able to prepare for, that we've practiced before. It sure sounds like he knew exactly how to beat the system, for lack of a better term. He knew there was a loophole in the rule. That's outstanding coaching. Anybody in that situation that is that tactical to know the loophole on that penalty and to know the time's going to run off the clock, you get a 12th man on the field and you're willing to take that risk of just tacking on the 5 yards, that's outstanding coaching. Because, okay, we're going to have 12 men on the field. Maybe they don't see it. They saw it. They called the penalty, and Oregon was okay with it. And they were prepared for it. And that led to the next play where you see Will Howard sliding, and from there it leads to look at Coach Lanning right there in the middle of the field, and the fans storming, rushing the field. He's got his Oregon chain on that he got from somebody in the crowd. I don't know where it got from, but man, that was awesome. Loudest fans in college football, loudest stadium in college football was a factor all night. Oregon's game plan on offense was outstanding. The defensive front four, you got to give a lot of credit to Derek Harmon and Mateo Uiagalelei on the front, like just stepping up front there. Having Jordan Birch out, who had an injury in practice on Thursday. We still don't know the extent of the injury. I would anticipate, it sounds like he will not play this Friday at Purdue, but it's not a season-ending injury. It sounds like they're just going to be a little bit patient with him now. And they were able to get to Will Howard. They were able to stop the run when they needed to. There's a couple big plays there, obviously, but the defense had a hell of a game. The linebacking core was outstanding. Just an all-around dogfight back and forth. It really, there's a few times where Oregon kind of beat themselves. They had a chance to take the points early on, and they went and kicked the field goal or went for it on fourth and goal and did not get the touchdown and could have taken some points early on. Had a missed field goal opportunity later on. A lot of risks. The risk paid off. 32-31, Oregon beats Ohio State to have a win against a top 5 opponent, and now including that win against Boise State, now a win against a top 15 opponent. No other team in the country could say they have 2 wins against top 15 teams in the country. And that's why they're ranked number 2 in the country this year. Such a big win. I have a feeling this will not be the last time these two face off this season. It's going to be another rock fight later on in the year. I don't know if it's going to be the Big Ten championship game. I don't know if it's going to be in a playoff game, but Oregon is now in the driver's seat to make it to the Big Ten championship game. I'm not going to say they're going to win the Big Ten championship game. If it's a rematch against Ohio State or a very, very good Penn State team, you never know what could happen. Iowa's been playing good football. Indiana is still undefeated. A lot of very good teams out there in the Big Ten that are still knocking on the door, and they know now that there's a big target on Oregon's back. But the biggest issue to be addressed there, again, that 12 men on the field is bringing up a lot of conversation. And it sounds like they are going to change the rule. But Dan Lanning knew the rule. He knew that there was a loophole with the system. He knew that, okay, we could get away with this. And they did. And it sounds like before this season even ends, the NCAA may change how that penalty gets addressed in the future. But props to Dan Lanning. I didn't believe it. I'm still not sure if it's fully true that he did that by design, but everything is setting up to make it look like. I mean, he called the timeout, then had that guy run out there at the last second. I mean, sometimes it's just, I mean, I'm not going to say that he did that by design. He did not fully admit it. He didn't fully admit it. And he knew the rule. And he did not fully admit it. Maybe he knew. That's good coaching. That's called knowing the rule book and knowing some good tactics that are allowed, that are currently not penalized or enforced in a certain way. So here's the crowd rushing the field. Here's the best mascot in sports, the Oregon Duck, crowd surfing across the field. Just absolute chaos. That stadium was so loud. The blackout crowd was all over the place. And then we talked about the fans. The Ohio State fans didn't realize what they were getting into until they were in the moment. And really, I don't think Dan Lanning knew either. Like I said earlier, he had to cover his ears to communicate with his coaches and with his quarterback. So that's enough about that game. That was, God, take your pick for the game of the year so far. You had Georgia and Alabama earlier in the year, and now you have this game. And next week, we get another top 5 matchup with Texas versus Georgia. I got a feeling that game's not going to be as close as this game. But I'm not going to spoil any previews for that. That's when you could tune into the Grateful Ducks tailgate episode on Friday night at 6:30. We're going to go live at 6:30 on Friday night, I believe. I have to double check to get confirmation on that. It might be a little bit closer to 6 o'clock. I just got to check. Where's the Grateful Ducks tailgate logo? Tune in Friday night to the Grateful Ducks tailgate. Yeah, nope, I'll find it later. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Friday night, 6:30, we'll call it, live. Grateful Ducks tailgate. We'll preview all the games in week 8 because there's going to be some more good ones. But for now, let's get to the AP poll, okay? And we'll rattle through this fairly quick, but I'm going to touch base on some of these teams as we go just to follow up because we can't just talk only the Ducks. We have to talk about the rest of these Big Ten games because there's some thrillers in the Big Ten there. But first, we got to talk about Army and Navy being sandwiched around these other Big Ten teams and Michigan in between. Michigan really shouldn't be ranked, but they are ranked still because they are Michigan. Army and Navy both undefeated, so they are on the path to potentially getting a Group of 5 bid into the playoff, but that all factors in on Boise State as well still. I think Boise State is looking like that Group of 5 team that'll get in. Michigan, I don't know. Michigan plays Illinois this week. Look at who's there at number 22 in the rankings. You got the Fighting Illini at Illinois. So for a little yumper here, we're talking about Illinois football. We're going to talk about them for a couple of weeks because they will be soon playing the Oregon Ducks here in a couple of weeks. But for now, they have to face off against Michigan next week. So that'll be an interesting one between two top 25 ranked opponents. I think I know how this game's going to play out. And I'm not going to give you the answer to that today. That's going to be Friday night at 6 Okay, we're back. Fuck the internet. Fuck you, Xfinity. I'm tired of your bullshit. Let's get to the AP poll. We're gonna rattle through this quickly here, okay? Xfinity. We were having such a good show. SMU, Pitt. Okay, Ole Miss drops down to the bottom tier of the rankings now after that overtime loss to LSU. 2 conference losses for Ole Miss now. Going to be tough for Lane Kiffin and that team to make the playoffs. That's very disappointing for them this season. They really are on the outside looking in there. Kansas State had a nice win over Colorado on the road. Travis Hunter did leave that game with an injury. It sounds like he's good to go, though, for this week. So that was a big win for Kansas State. Indiana still undefeated. How long until Indiana goes without a loss? Are they going to make it the full season? Can they get past Michigan and then get past Ohio State? We will see. Boise State still only has that one loss to Oregon earlier in the year, looking like a better and better loss, especially with how close they played them all year. They're looking like they will be that group of 5 team that's in. Texas A&M was on a bye week. We will get back to them down the road. Then you've got Notre Dame. We got BYU, Notre Dame. Tennessee struggled with Florida at home. Notre Dame could essentially coast for a couple of weeks. We'll see how things shake out there. Clemson playing like a top 10 team, well deserved. Iowa State still undefeated in Big 12 play. So you've got Iowa State and BYU both undefeated in the Big 12. That's going to be an intriguing matchup, I believe, later in the season. The Big 12 is a giant mystery still. And those right now are currently the top 2 teams in the Big 12. I'm not sure if that's how things will end up. LSU with a well-deserved move back into the top 10 there at number 8. Alabama, I'm still unsure of. They lost a close game to South Carolina. We'll see. They have a big